Yeah, all right. So, you will notice that we are dealing with two kinds of shapes right now, prisms and pyramids. Hopefully, at some point in your past, you have all looked at prisms. So I'm going to start with prisms. A prism is a three-dimensional shape. What are the three dimensions? Height, width, length, or what we usually say, yes? Now, there's a problem with that, because right now, how would you measure my height? From my feet to the top of my head, yes? Does everyone agree with that? Now, somebody usually makes a joke here about how short that would be. So thank you for not doing that. Now, what happens, though, if I were to lie down? Now what's my height? It's my fat belly, right? Why? How do we measure height? From the ground up, yeah? But if I'm lying down, am I all of a sudden eight inches tall instead of 5'8"? No, I am not. So people have a lot of trouble with that, because when you're taught math and you're taught geometry, people give you formulas, right? Length times width, right? Base times height, which is wonderful until you think about the fact that height doesn't necessarily mean from the bottom to the top, does it? Because if it meant from the bottom to the top, then when I lie down, my height is that way. And that's not the case, is it? Everybody understand that? All right. That's the first thing I want to get out of the way. The definition of a prism is any polygon. Now, a polygon is just a shape. Any polygon that repeats 2 times and is separated by rectangles. Okay? That's what makes a prism. So if we were going to draw it, we draw a shape. Everyone agree? Got a nice little triangle there. Now, if I'm going to make that a prism, that triangle has to repeat. And then it's separated by rectangles, one on each side. Everybody good? That's a triangular prism. I can have a rectangular prism. There's a rectangle, there's another rectangle, and it's separated by rectangles. What do I call a circular prism? A cylinder. Because it's two circles separated by one rectangle. Yes? Is everybody good with prisms? Excellent. Now, there's a difference between prisms and the second shape which we are speaking of today, which are pyramids. Pyramids are different because they have a polygon from which they start. Then they collapse to a point. Now, right here under there, the starting polygon is known as the base. In both of these, when you in your past math work talked about the base of something, you almost always considered it to be the bottom of the thing, correct? You cannot do that in the real world because top and bottom of things is made up, isn't it? If you were doing math anywhere, for example, in space, is there a top and a bottom? No. Correct? If I stand on my hands, the base of my height would all of a sudden become my hands, wouldn't it? Because they're on the ground. If I lie down, the base all of a sudden becomes my butt. But that's not how we would measure my height, because height goes from base to the top, correct? So it's a real problem because a great many of you get locked into those formulas and the words like base times height. And you think the base has to be on the bottom. But it doesn't. The base means the starting shape. All right? This is the next thing that's important. The exposed area of a solid. Right now, forget about the little lumps. Forget about this in the bottom. What shape would you say this is? It's a cylinder, right? Because it's got a circle on top, that same circle on the bottom, and if I unrolled this, it would be a rectangle, yes? Everybody with me? Okay. The surface area of this is this circle, the sides, and the bottom, correct? Does everybody agree? Because that is the exposed area of this solid. Now what's the surface area? Both sides of the bottom, both sides of this rectangle. Does everybody understand? Here's the way I like to explain it. If you took the shape and were to dip it in a bucket of paint, where would the paint go? If there's a top, it doesn't get anywhere inside. If there isn't a top, it gets everywhere. Does everybody understand? Sweet. Now, oh crap, we didn't draw any pyramids. They start from a shape, like a square, and then they go up to a point. Or they start from a circle, and they go up to a point. Or a triangle, or a hexagon, or an octagon. It doesn't matter. Okay, the point is they are not this shape over and over and over again, whereas these are. Everybody good? Okay. Draw a line down the middle of your paper, because we're going to do two things with all of these. The first one we're going to do is surface area. Now, a cereal box looks like this. We all know that. There's the front of it. Mattios. There's the cereal box. Now, who decides what the base, the length, and the length, the width, and the height are? Who makes that decision? It's not a trick question. Who decides? Because right here I have three numbers, correct? You guys already told me that three dimensions were length, width, and height. Who decides which of these is length, which is width, and which is height? Who does? You do. The person doing the question makes the decision. Right now, Most of you would say, oh, that's sitting on a table. So I bet most of you would say that was the height. Would you? Okay. So which one of those measurements could I put there? 40. Okay. Then what would you say was this one? You want to call that the width? Okay, and which number left over would that be? 24. Which means this must be the length, and you're going to say the only number left is 8. Does everybody agree? Or, I shouldn't say does everybody agree. Does everybody follow the thinking there? Now look on your data booklet that you have. It's got a drawing of a prism, yes? On the back. Does it agree with what we said? Does it have the L, W, and H in the same place? No, it doesn't. Does it matter? No, it doesn't. This is where I come back again to concept versus doing math. It doesn't matter. All right? Now, so what is this made up of? We already know it's made up of rectangles, yes? There's this rectangle, and there's how many of them? Times 2. There's this rectangle, and there's how many of them? Times 2. And there's this rectangle, and there's how many of them? Times 2. So all you got to do surface area is find all the surfaces. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You all already know how to do this. You already know how to do most of this stuff. If you look on the data booklet, it gives you a formula. Surface area equals 2 WH plus LW plus LH. Does my drawing have WL and H on it?
Yes.
They're different than... Go have your break. Back to business. Now, if you look on your sheet, you'll see that has a formula, which is real easy to fill in. All you got to do is put in the numbers. W times H. Well, the way I drew W and H was 24 and 40. So, I got to do 24 times 40 plus LW. The way I drew that, LW is 8 and 24. And then LH. The way I drew that, that's 8 and 40. Now, here's the problem. Half of you are going to try and do that in one step on your calculator, and you're going to get the wrong answer. Because what you're going to do is you're going to see that that is multiplied. W times H. That is multiply, and that is multiply. And that is multiply. But what are those? Addition. And you're going to punch it into your calculator. You're going to go times, 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 times. And then you're going to multiply the whole thing by 2. And you get a number of something way up in the millions. And some of you are going to put that as the answer on your test. Does that make any amount of sense? No. So even if you write the formula down and you put in the right numbers, if you give me an answer up in the millions, what does that say to me about your knowledge of the concepts of math? That's pretty weak, right? Does everybody follow me? So, of course, you've got to make sure that you do this correctly on your calculator. And the best way I can tell you people at your age to do that is to do more than one step. It's not that hard to punch it in properly, all in one step. But everybody should be telling me this number right now. Well, not right now, because you've got to punch it in. So. And when somebody has an answer for me, it would be nice if they would say it out loud, and then we can check it with somebody else.
2,944.
I have, from my good friend Josh here, 2,944. And of course, that would be centimeters squared. Why is it squared? Because area only has two dimensions, length and width. Now, I know that some of you have had teachers that if you forgot to put that centimetered squared there, they would have marked the whole question wrong. I am not that teacher. Is he correct? Is the next question. Does somebody else have that? He waited patiently for corroboration. It is right. Make sure that you can make that happen on your calculator. Because one of the biggest things that gets in math teachers' ways is the fact that you all have different calculators. And everybody's like, well, I can't make that work on my calculator. That's a pain. You have to know how your machine works. It's going to be even more of a pain when we do trigonometry. So I'm trusting everybody is comfortable with that. On the next page, it's summer school. I do not want to do a rectangle pyramid. So we are going to do erase rectangle pyramid. We are going to erase the 48. We are going to make that a square pyramid with base dimensions of 32 feet. Show So, if I'm doing a pyramid, what does that mean? How does a pyramid start? With the base. And we know that this pyramid has a square bottom. Yes? Now, remember, does base necessarily have to be the bottom? No. The base is the shape that we start from. Since it's a square, what do I know about this distance and this distance? They are the same, 32 and 32, right? Everybody good? Okay. And we know that a pyramid comes up to a point. Now, if I wanted the surface area of this thing, then I must need to find that triangle, yes? How many times? Times 4. And I need to find that square on the bottom. How many times? Once. So the surface area of this is really 4 triangles plus a square, right? Well, if you look on your sheet, triangles are base times height divided by 2, and there's 4 of them. What happens to that 4 and that 2? I know you all have done enough math to know what happens to that 4 and that 2. What happens to it if it looks like that? What's the answer to what I just wrote in red there? 2. So what's going to happen to that 4 and that 2 here? They're going to become 2 base times height plus, now a square is length times width, but in a square, length and width are the same, right? So it's just the side squared. Now there's a problem with that, because when you look on your sheet, it gives you a formula for a square-based pyramid. And what is that formula? Look on your sheet, find it, tell me what it is. Two BS plus B squared. What is this S? If you look on the drawing, it shows you. The S is the distance up the side of the pyramid. What have we been given? The height of the pyramid, correct? How would we measure height of a pyramid? I'm going to draw it bigger so it's easier to see. How would we measure the height of that? From the bottom up to the top, correct? Because remember, in here is the back side of the pyramid. That's fine, right? Except we don't need that measurement, do we? We need this triangle here. How do I find that distance? Because I don't have that distance. I know this is 32, I know this is 32, and I know this is 65. So how will I find this? Talk to your neighbor for a moment and figure it out. Or see if you can figure it out. That's not drawn very well. I'm going to draw it better while you were talking. Alrighty. So how am I going to figure out this blue line here? Who has an idea? Erlen. It is indeed Pythagoras, which you all know as A, B, and C. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. There's a problem with learning it that way, and I don't like teaching it that way because, of course, if you change the letters, kids say they can't do it anymore. which I don't understand that, but they do it all the time. So, do I know A here? What is it? 65 squared. Do I know B here? What is it? Really?
16.
It's half of 32. Why is it half of 32, Jaskarn? Because this is in the middle. So this is 16 squared, and that will get me C squared. And then what do I have to do at the very end of it all? I have to take the square root of this. So once I know that, we'll come back to here, I need to write this down. And I'm going to keep writing it in blue because I wrote the formula in blue. Slant height always equals the square root of the actual height squared plus half of the base squared. Always. Write that down somewhere. Figure it out. You gotta remember to cut it in half. So in this case, it was the square root of 65 squared plus 16 squared. And then you would find that answer on your calculator. And you would get the number. When you get it, I want you to round it to the nearest number, and you will see why that's easy to do.
67.
It is indeed 67. So again, oh, by the way, again, I wanted you to split this in half. So now, it's not the height that I want. So now, I have a B, which is 32. That's a B. I have an S, which is 67. Can I fill this in now? Yes. Surface area equals 2 times B, which is 32, times S, which is 67, plus 32B squared. And then I just punch that into my calculator. Make it happen. And then tell me what you have for an answer. Who has an answer for me? Taken a little longer than I would have thought to punch in, to hit 8 buttons for the video game generation. Pardon me? 6,336. Does anybody else have that? Was it punched in correctly? $6,336 is what every single person in the room got? Okay, I'm going to punch it in now and see. That's not what I get. 5,312. There you go. feet squared. Now, the question becomes, if you showed me that, am I happy? Yeah, because if you get to there, that shows me you know what you're doing with this concept. But if you didn't get that, that shows me you're not very good at either bed mass or you're not very good at working your calculator. Right? If it's bed mass, is that a problem? Very much so. If it's not being able to work your calculator very well, is that a problem? Not as bad, because that we can fix, right? Because you're learning new things on your calculator every day. But bed mass, you should already know. Is everybody good? Okay, go to the next question. Again, split the page in half. I got a cone. So if it's a cone, what's the base? Circle. But I'm going to draw it like a funnel, and I'm doing it on purpose. Because I want you guys to get out of this idea that the base has to be the bottom. Understand? The base is the shape from which we start. So we start at this circle. So that makes this the base. Agreed? Now we already know that a pyramid, prism, anything, it's the outside that is going to give us the surface area, right? So that means, is this, I didn't want to use red, is this part of the outside? Sure it is. What shape is it? It's a circle. And then this is also part of the outside. And that yellow part, the green part, is a circle. And the yellow part starts as a circle, doesn't it? Because it has to go all the way around this circle. Then it ends at a point, right? Okay. That yellow part ends up being, since it's part of a circle, we know it's got to use some of the circle rules. What is the rule to finding an area of a circle? It is pi r squared. So I know the yellow part must still have to use pi, correct? Because it starts as a circle. And it must still have to use r. But instead of squaring r, because it's not a whole circle, the yellow part, which we call the sides, are yellow, the sides end up being pi times r times the slant. Now to find the area, I would have to add a circle in the sides. So to use math, I would have to add the circle in the sides. Now there's a problem here, isn't there? What is S? S equals the slant height, right? Read the question. Have I been given a slant height? No, I have not. What have I been given? A radius, which is right there, yes? There's my radius. And I've been given a height. What do I know about slant height? It's always what? We just wrote it down. It's always the square root of what? Height squared plus half of the base squared. Well, didn't the radius already give me half of the base? So it must be the square root of the height squared plus the radius squared. So what is it in this case? What numbers am I putting there? 22 squared plus 15 squared, and then I get the answer. What is it? And you can round it to the nearest somebody tell me what I'm trying to say. Nearest number. Because it's yucky, right? It's a big decimal. And I don't care about... I'm trying to avoid that question of, what do I round to? Just put it to the nearest number. Show me some work. What is it? Pardon me? 27. So now, do I have an R and an S?
Yeah.
So can I do this?
Yeah.
Surface area equals pi r squared plus pi r s. And I just put my numbers in. Pi times 15 squared plus pi times 15 times 27. Now, I need to stop you for a second here. Those of you that were in grade 9 last year, did you do anything with pi? Yeah, I ate it. But seriously, did you do anything with the number pi if you were in grade 9 last year? Not much. Did you do anything? If you have done something with pi previous to grade 9 and 10, you probably used, and do not do this, you probably said pi equals 3.14. Right? Yeah. A lot of people are still teaching you guys to use this. Because in grade 6, 7, 8, when you're learning about pi, most of you don't have a fancy calculator that has a pi button. There's a problem with using that. It's not very exact. Because pi goes on forever. So, what I like to do is what I'm about to show you. 15 squared is 225, right? So this part is 225 times pi. Does everyone agree? And this part, 15 times 27, is 15 times 30 is 4. I can't do that in my head quickly enough. 405 pi. Everybody cool? Now, if I have 225 pi and 405 pi, then I have 630 pi. Is everybody okay with that? Does everybody see what I've done? This is what your grade 11 and 12 and university teachers, if you go there, are going to want. They do not want decimals. Is everybody cool with that? Because decimals aren't exact. As you go further and further in math, you will start leaving pi as that symbol, and you will never change it. Everybody cool? Now, if that bothers you immensely, you just can't handle it, or you're writing a test for another teacher, and it's multiple choice, and you have A, B, C, D, and they're all crazy decimals, like one of the answers is 1,979.2, and this one is 1,800, and this one is 2,135, and this one is 1,900.74. Then if the answers are all in decimals, then obviously you have to work it out. Does everybody understand? But for me, I'm perfectly happy if you leave it like that. Everybody cool? And of course, what that really means is 630 times the pi button. if you cannot find your pi button, if there isn't a button on your calculator that actually shows the symbol for pi, it's probably a second function button. You have to push shift or second F or something like that to get to it. But again, I'm not incredibly fussed if you don't find it and you just leave it like this. As a matter of fact, I actually prefer it. Because then we get to avoid the how many decimal places do you want question. Everybody cool? Okay, so we're going to do number 4 together. Then I'm going to have you do some work. Pop can. Pop can has a circle on the top. Then it's got sides. And then what's on the bottom? Another circle. So, if I'm doing the surface area, how many of those circles are there? 2. Times 2. And then there's the sides. And the sides are just what? They're just a rectangle. Except that rectangle goes all the way around the circle, and it has that, right? So the top and the bottom are really easy. There's 2 circles, which means it's 2 pi r squared to do the top and the bottom. Everybody follow me? One circle is pi r squared, then we've got a second one. So it's 2 times pi r squared. But the blue part's a rectangle. The area of a rectangle we know is length times width. Except if I stand up a pop can, pretend this is a pop can, what would you say is this measurement of my pop can? You would call it the height, wouldn't you? Does everyone agree? Because it's standing up on the ground. But if I flattened it out, you would call one the length and one the width, wouldn't you? So when I make it a cylinder, does the height not become either the length or the width? Everyone agree? And the other one becomes the circle, which is the circumference, right? We just talked about the circle, the circumference, when we were talking about rolling my coffee cup. The circumference was 2 pi r, right? So that must mean the L is the circumference, and the W is the height. And circumference, we know, is 2 pi r. So length times width is circumference times height, so it must be 2 pi r times h. And that will get you your sides. Now there's a problem with this. If I say this pop can is lying on the ground, if you have not been paying attention, you are going to tell me that this h is that. Is it? No. So I am going to make a big deal right now of writing this down in a strange color, different than what I've been using a lot of. H is H is the distance from the base to the opposite point. So, in a cylinder, H is always from base to base, even if I lie it down. This is my H. Everybody cool? In a pyramid, my base is the circle, yes? So the h always goes from the base shape to the opposite point, even if it's lying on its side. Is everybody good? Height does not mean up and down. It means distance between the base shape and the other end of your prism or pyramid. Good? Awesome. So now we can fill this in. 2 pi, what's my r? 5 squared plus 2 pi times 5, and what's my h? 20. Now, since we're in the 10th grade and we are going further in math, are we going to deal with this pi or are we going to leave it as pi? We are going to leave it as pi. So, what is 5 squared? 25. What's 25 times 2? 50 pi. Plus, what's 2 times 5? And 10 times 20? 200 pi. Then what do I do with these 50 pi's and these 200 pi's? To get 250 pi. That is where you will want to be. What is the only time you would bother doing 250 times pi? The only time I want to see that is if it's a multiple choice question and I've given you the answers in numbers. Everybody cool? Now, do you even really need to punch it in? Because what's pi really close to? 3. So 250 times pi is pretty close to 250 times 3, correct? So if there's a choice there that is pretty close to 750, do you know that's the right answer? Yes. Everybody understand? And just out of curiosity, if you actually push 250 pi, what do you get? $250 pi from your calculator gets you 785.4, which is pretty darn close to 750. Everybody good? Why am I making a big deal out of this? Because it helps with that estimating thing, right? It helps you to know if you've made a silly answer if you can estimate first. Everybody good? All right. It is 11:30. Break is at 12:15. I want you to work on page 30, page 31, and page 32. I am going to give you until your break at 12:05 to do so. After 12:05, you're going to come back. I'm going to hand you back your quiz. We'll go over it. And then we'll talk about some of this. We may move on today, we may not. That's when we are at this point. It depends on how well you guys do with 1-5 before I carry on. Everybody good? Go. I've got 5 more tests to mark, and then I will be free to start walking around and helping you. But you already know how to do all of this stuff. I'm going to make a couple of changes here for you. Everybody, eyes up here, please. This didn't show up in the photocopying. That is a 90-degree angle. Which means, what are you allowed to do with this triangle? If you need to. Pythagoras. What do these symbols mean? That every one of these has the same value. Right? 90, 90, that's cool. These are photocopied. These are on your photocopy, right? All these 90-degree angles on the next page. Page 31, they're all there. They showed up. And then everything else is good. Okay, go. How do you find the area of the green? It's 5 squared because it's a square, right? So that is 5 times 5. 5 times 5. And how many of those green sides are there? 6. So you multiply it by 6. 6 times 25 is 150. Easy peasy. Now, this one I talked about it on the back board. There's that triangle, which is 6 by 8. And then on the back side, that triangle exists again. 6 by 8, which makes the front and the back a rectangle, which is, of course, 48. So this part is 48. Then there's the bottom part. How big is that rectangle? 8 by 7, which is 56. Then there's the back rectangle. How big is that? 6 by 7, which is 42. Then there's this rectangle. How big's that? Well, it's 7 by something, but I don't know. But you do know, because this is 90 degrees. So you know this is a hypotenuse, and it must be 10. Then you just add it all up. 48 and 42 is 90, and 70 is 160, and 56 is 216. Nobody should be having too much trouble with this. This one, it's a regular prism, right? Anything special about it? Nope. Is there a formula for it? Yup. 2WH plus HL plus LW. Or whatever it is. Doesn't matter, does it? Why doesn't it matter? Is 2 times 5 the same as 5 times 2? So order and multiplying doesn't matter, does it? So does it matter if it's LH or HL? No. Who decides which of these is L, W, and H? You do, as long as you don't repeat it. I am going to make this L, this W, and this H. Because it doesn't matter. All I do then is fill it in. W, I have as 12. H, I have as 4. Then I'm going to add H and L. I have that as 4 and 3. Then I'm going to add L and W, which I have as 3 and 12. Then I'm going to do math. 12 times 4 is 48, plus 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 times 12 is 36. 48 and 12 is 60, 60 and 36 is 96, 2 times 96, and then that is 192. Shouldn't have been any problems there. All 30 of you should have gotten all 3 of those right. Now we come to an issue. There is the shape with which we are dealing, yes? Now, observe what I have built for you here. That gray rectangle is 12 by 4, just like the bottom of this. Does everyone agree? Okay. Now, that rectangle moves up to be 4 tall, yes? Now, I know that this is 4 tall, correct? So if it just looked like this, I have my L, W, and H, don't I? So this on the left is everything green there, isn't it? Right? Just to show you again, that is everything that's green, because this is that roof. Everyone cool? Now the only thing that's happened here is this has gone up 4. So if I know this, all I've added is this side here. How many of them? 4. So all I've done was I've added this, which is 4 by 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, correct? So it's 2 LW plus LH plus WH plus 4 of this top guy here. 4 squares. Now, is there a formula for this shape? Which, by the way, is my favorite Tetris piece, if anyone cares. Nobody plays Tetris anymore. But if you do, the T shape is far and away the best shape in the game. Does everybody see that? Is there a formula for this? No. You actually have to think. Just like in the real world, if you are messing around with the area of your yard or something, there is often not formulas for them. You have to figure it out. So, the green part is right here. So all I got to do is fill it in. LW, it doesn't matter. 4 times 4. That covers this guy. Plus, and then the other two are 12 times 4. And 12 times 4. Which is 2, 16 plus 96. Which is 2 times 112, which is 224. And that's all the green stuff. But as I just showed you in the drawing, I added this red side, didn't I? And I added 4 of them. So I have to add 4. And how big is that? 4 by 4. So 4 times 4 times 4, which is 224 plus 64, which is 288. Any questions? The advice that I have to give you is what is drawn on the back board there. Do not make this complicated. Everything you see is an easy shape with which you have been working since about the 4th grade, when you first did area. Right? Might be the 5th grade. I'm trying to remember when my daughter did area, and it was either the 4th or the 5th grade. Now, we turn the page over. I'm going to do these two, and then I'm going to let you people get back to work. I want to go over the quiz first. So we'll do that in a sec. Again, before you start writing stuff down, I watch you people do your work. You start writing stuff down without thinking at all. You just stop and think. What is that? You knew that this was 3 tall. Do you have a formula for that? It is 2 WH HL LW, correct? Except this rectangle here isn't really part of it, is it? So I've got to subtract out a 3 times 3, because that isn't really there. Agreed? Now, what about this? Do you already know how to do that? Sure you do. It's that triangle, but there's 2 of them, so it's really a rectangle, isn't it? And that would be 4 by 3. 4 by 3. And then there's this rectangle, which is how big? 3 by 4 or 4 by 3 again. And this rectangle on the back, which is 3. How long is this? 5, automatically, because of Pythagoras. And then what do you do with all of those answers? Just add it up. Where do you get the WHHL and LW? From who? You. You make them what they are. Same thing over here. You already know how to do that, right? The only thing you're not going to count is one of these 8 by 15s, right? You're not going to count that. So you're going to do the formula, but you're going to subtract out the part, one of the ones that you don't need, which is 8 by 15. Then you're going to look at the top. What's that? What is it? It's a rectangle. And there's 2 of them. So it's just L times W times 2. What's this? It's a right triangle. And there's 2 of them, correct? So there's going to be another one of them right here, right? 90 degrees, and those are going to be the same sides. Hey, a 4-sided figure where all 4 sides are the same? Just a square, isn't it? And you know that these are 5. So it's just 5 times 5 plus the red rectangle, which is 15 by 5. Then what are you going to do with all those numbers? Add them up. And addition is not new to us, right? Same thing here. So I'm going to take you away from this for a moment and go over the quiz. Then I'm going to shut up and let you finish this. We will be seeing the right answers to this first thing tomorrow morning. Okay? I'm going to stop recording. There's one video up. There will be a second video up in a moment. But I'm not going to record going over the quiz because there's 2 people that aren't here that need to do it.